Great. All right. Hello, world. Podlayer team back at it again. This is a new venture. This is coming out of the Mojo Journalism channel. And basically, this is going to be a bit of an experiment my spirits want me to do. And we're going to see how it goes. I'll be doing a few of these kinds of things. So let me talk about why I'm doing this and then what kind of thing it is I'm trying to do. Okay. So first of all, not to go on this too long because I want to get into what the focus of this is here, but this is a channel of Podlayer campaign. We have several channels doing different themed things, but they all do serve an overall campaign purpose, which is to kind of push the Podlayer discovery and the information about it forward. As a part of that, I really need, in order to set us apart now and to train us, and in the future to give the work that we do the kind of forensic heft that just can't be challenged. I need to get that Rosetta Stone figured out. All right, boom. As a part of that, fifth gear. When you're doing the kind of work I'm doing, fifth gear is very, very important. And so I need to get that in the best shape that I can. Boom. Okay. Now that gets to, I need to have certain kinds of conversations with my spirits and then to some degree with other humans, and in order for me to get my thoughts out. And then I can see them, see what's good and new, also what needs to be rearranged and made better. So I've been playing with how to do that over the years. And so I tried something a little while back, which I liked, but I need to shift, which is where I was doing sessions on different bubbles with various people who are Podlayer practitioners. And that was really great, but two things I took away from that is, one, doing that many bubbles at one time, sometimes it's a bit much because there's so much data. And then also, I like to talk deep, and the segments were too short. So I've been looking at things I like, and two of them are, for example, Joe Rogan's podcast and also Bill Maher's show. And both of them go with a long form. Even Bill Maher, he goes longer in the general show, but actually there's extra content, I think, after Q&A that's longer and more casual, just sort of just talking like people talk with the audience and so forth. And so both of those, I'm like, I would like to do a bit more of that when I'm conversating with my spirits and with people naturally, my natural flow. I tend to do that, which is why I was very pleased actually that you specifically mentioned the 2 hours will give us time to really kind of let the conversation breathe. Totally. All right. So let me just go over here. So we're doing the long form, this experiment, and what they tend to go with, I've noticed, is usually one-on-one, or the person, the host, plus a regular contributor, plus the guest of the day. 3 people, up to 4 people I've seen sometimes, which is the host, a co-host, one of the regular contributors that they have, and the guest of the day. So 2 to 4 seems to be the format. So that's what I'm kind of playing around. And always there's one guest who's the feature of the day, and the overall topics will stay in that kind of wheelhouse. And we have a really kind of nice, expansive conversation with a person. All right. Boom, boom, boom. Got that. All right. Check this off here. Okay. Done. Okay. So that's one thing, is that for me, just to close off the fifth gear thing, have this conversation done that way. I noticed that I experience periods of my lens being clear after a good conversation. A good conversation is an amazing way to clear one's mind and take it upwards. Okay, so then that gets into another thing, which is I need to develop, that's kind of my G's here, I need to develop a voice with talking publicly about events of the day that people are talking about now and there's energy with and so forth. And to be honest, I've been kind of telling my spirits, no, I want to get to data bedrock before I do that. I feel more confident then. And they're saying you need to start training pre that, so when you get that bedrock, you already have a voice. So this is a bit of an experiment to help me get there as well. All right, checking these things off, check. Okay, so then that brings us to what we're trying to do here. I'm going to call this What the News. I was trying to think of the name to call it, but that's kind of what comes up. It's just these things come up, on cable. They come up on the internet, and you're like, "What? The world's doing what now?" Or what's, And I want to say something about it. And I noticed, Maya, that you also posted sometimes a similar vein where things you're like, "What?" and it kind of like instigates a conversation. Okay, we might be ready now to get into, now we kind of get the big picture. Now we kind of get into what the show does, or is planned to do, which is kind of take some large things on with a guest. Okay, so I've talked about this a little bit, I think, on Facebook, but I'll just sort of give a highlight here. There's a large thing happening. I think it's around the world to a degree, but I don't want to say too much of that until I study more. But I think I've seen inklings of that in general. But I'm more aware of the U.S. geopolitical sphere. And with that, there's this obviously, conservative versus liberal, but now there's a thing where there's become some schisms. There's liberal, and there's people who identify themselves as more classic liberal or humanist or something. And then now you have the right and the alt-right. So that kind of thing is going on, and it's played out everywhere, all over the country, and everything's going on everywhere, media, commerce, and so forth. And there's some key issues that seem to be going on. And I like to kind of focus here today on distinguishing, because I think in general, from what I've seen you posting, you're like myself, you're pretty liberal. You're a pretty liberal person by, the classic.
Yeah, I'm kind of, my political views kind of shift a lot, but I took the political compass test like a few weeks ago, and I was like smack in the middle, like 0-0 were the coordinates, like. So you make of that what you will. Yeah.
Exactly. Myself, I don't even, I like you, I never really think about plotting myself in that way. I tend to focus mainly on being humane and using sound reasoning and evidence to do so.
Right.
And then wherever that falls, I guess that falls. And that's like a big thing that's been annoying me. It's like, I just want to like dispel this thing. It's annoying me so bad is, there was, I think, periods of time, like one side has it more versus the other, or like now it seems more like there's a schism and each side has part of its populace that is about science and facts and reason and stuff. And then the other ones are just like an agenda of things they want and feelings on both sides, right and left.
Right.
And then there we are. And so I find myself like, I'm less having problems with the individual issues than I am with that way of coming at it. That seems to be really pervasive now. And this is again to our highlight, which is talking about campuses, which seems to be like, like the breach of the battle that's going on here. So that's kind of like at a large scale. And I've mentioned different things. It's going on in politics. It's going on everywhere. So I'm going to just then take us down. What's next here? Yeah, basically, some key issues, there's a lot more to it than this, but some key issues, and the campuses are kind of like the battleground for this, is I tend to be more humanely based than, say, conservatively based in a lot of my political leanings, as long as it stays with truth. I don't believe in living in a fantasy land. I need facts.
Right.
What I believe in is this Islamophobia thing.
Yeah.
I'm not getting that at all. The other one is the gender fluidity.
Yeah. I could talk about that for a long time. I have some strong opinions about that.
Because again, if you look at the things I've read in my life and the conversations that have my spirits and popular theory, it's very open to whatever nature gave you as your gifts. Awesome. But that doesn't let you be in a fantasy world, because just like I want to be an INTP or something, like, whatever you are is beautiful and wonderful, but I can't say you're something other than you're not. That's just not how it works. But so anyway, the gender fluidity, and then modern feminism. Because again, throughout my life, my sisters and my mom, most of the ladies I've ever had serious relationships with would consider themselves kind of feminists. And so if you asked me, like most of my life, are you a feminist? I would have said yes. But now I'm like, are you a liberal? No. Are you a feminist? No. And it's like, are you okay with anyone just living their beliefs for them? I used to say yes on that, but now I'm not so sure on that either. So anyway, long story short, those are three of the big things, and they are going on campus. So if you want to talk, take it away now and say whatever you have to. That was kind of my big spiel. So take it away, please.
Okay. Well, there's a lot I can say, and we'll get to it kind of as we go along. But one thing that I wanted to say was that I've actually been to university twice. I'm doing. This is the second time that I'm in university. I graduated from high school in 2009, And so at first, for 2 years, I was at York University, which is in the Toronto area in Canada. And I just wanted to say that when I was at York University from 2009 to 2011, there wasn't really this kind of like rabid, like extreme leftist culture. Like there were certain professors who were very extreme, but like in terms of students, like I was studying political science. So you would think that me and my friends would be like going to protests and like doing all this crazy stuff. But like it was actually way more moderate than it was now. Like it was unheard of.
So that capped at 2003, was it, you said?
This was between 2009 and 2011.
I don't know
exactly when this stuff on campus is like really. Sorry?
I'm really bad with math, so I was trying to make sure that I understood correctly.
Yeah.
You're talking as little as 6 years ago.
Yeah, as little as 6 years ago. Yeah.
Please.
So I don't know exactly at what point it started, but I have to say, since I've gone back to university for a different degree, even in the time that I've been there, it's gotten noticeably worse and noticeably more extreme, and it keeps getting that way every year. So that was just kind of the first thing that I wanted to mention, was that this is like a very recent phenomenon, that it's gotten quite this bad.
Question.
Right.
Because things I've heard, but like I said, I don't have the experience like you do, is that although this uprising is more recent, I don't know it's quite that recent, but that there was a indoctrination period where basically this was bound to happen at some point because they were being indoctrinated into a bit of a fantasy reality while they were in their college years. And so that then bred, I heard something like this, it bred the parents of the people that are doing this now.
Well, I don't know so much about like my parents' generation. I mean, my parents are from a different country, so it's like, it's hard to sort of talk about that. But one thing I can say is that there's a lot of professors in social science and humanities courses. I think I heard a statistic somewhere that something like 1 in 4 of them identify openly as Marxist. And that's not to mention like others who like don't call themselves Marxist, but are still very extreme. So when I was doing that first degree, the students that I met weren't that extreme. Like there wasn't this culture among the students, but some of the professors and teaching assistants were already like very indoctrinated and trying to indoctrinate us.
Gotcha. How I'm curious how that hit you compared to others. Did you notice at the time? Because it seems like when you went back to college that these people that are sort of rabid now, there's some of them around your age. So they somehow got infected in a way that you didn't, while I'm assuming that you were exposed to similar things that made them as they are.
Yeah. At the time, it didn't really. One of the other things is that my family is from the former Soviet Union. So even though I've had certain left-wing opinions throughout my life, I've never been like really fully communist, because just I've known how that's worked out, and I've seen how that, you know, affects people in society. But the first time I was doing a degree, I think, at least I remember one class in particular. The class itself wasn't that bad, but our teaching assistant, so like after the class we had to go to an extra like smaller sort of thing, and the teaching assistant would give us stuff to read written by Karl Marx, and he would demand that we analyze everything taught in the class from a Marxist perspective. And so it was kind of assumed that Marxism was correct. Like that was never really debated in the first place. It was just sort of assumed, and then you had to take that for granted and use it.
How did you react to that?
I remember arguing with the TA a little bit. I didn't want to get into a huge thing because I just wanted to get my mark.
Right. How about yeah, I was even thinking more. Thank you for that. But I was also even thinking more internally, because it seems like it did influence a lot of other people internally. But it seems like
it's hard to say. I only remember being really close to a few people in that class, and everybody was kind of like. There was one guy who considered himself a Marxist, but I got the impression he was already Marxist from before. Like it wasn't that the school influenced him. For a lot of other people, I think they were just kind of confused. But one thing I also wanted to say is that like people talk a lot about these like extreme left-wing professors indoctrinating students, which I think is part of the story. But the other thing is that a lot of this stuff also ends up online, and there are certain websites where these kinds of thinking are very popular. And teenagers, like even who aren't in university yet, go on these websites, and a lot of them, like don't have a lot of experience in life. They're kind of naive and they read all these theories and they just kind of believe it. And so that's also kind of where part of this is coming from, I think.
So combination you're saying of the, I thought one you said specifically, maybe one alluded to, specifically online, I'm getting a lot of feedback. I wonder why that is. Maybe I'm talking too loud. I'll turn my volume down. I'm sorry, what were we talking about?
We were talking about how part of the indoctrination is from professors and partly online.
Yes, the online is like this extra resource, but it seems like also you said they were young and confused, so they're like in a bubble of non-reality. They have like a non-reality bubble going on.
Yeah.
It seems also that these ideas are like appealing to, I think, some noble aspects. And so I think to be fair and balanced here, you know, it is appealing, I think, to some desire to make a better world.
Right, right.
But I think there's also elements of it because the math is off, obviously, like Marxism, and we can go off on, you know, its issues there. But it's inherently going to appeal to a certain kind of greed. There's greed for money. There's also greed for being correct or righteous in the narrative.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things too is that when religion was a big part of everyday Western sort of society, like it wasn't perfect or right or anything, but it played certain social and psychological roles. Like it gave people, when people would go to church or synagogue, they would have a sense of community. They would do volunteer work. They would be presented potentially a way to better themselves in the world. It might have not been the right way or the perfect way, but it would have been something. And I think when we got rid of that, we didn't really replace it with anything. And so I think for some of these people, it's also kind of their new religion. You know, it's a way to make the world a better place. It's a way to be a good person. It's a way to be right about things. You know, all the stuff that religion used to provide.
Yeah, and with all the same errors of it has some good intentions, but it's not based on evidence. And so then personal, you know, flaws of character, they seep in and there's no evidence to say,
Right.
Very interesting. Okay, if you have anything more, please take the floor. Whenever you're ready, just let me know, and I have a list of, like, you know, provocative items to discuss.
Yeah, no, I think we're good for now. So if you have, we can move on. Yeah.
All right. Oh, there's a bunch. Okay, so, oh my goodness. All right, so this is in no particular order. At some point, I'm going to try to maybe figure out a timeline of how this, you know, went down as far as like the internet's recording of it. So for me, let's see what here I have. One is the Jordan Peterson thing.
Yeah, I've been following that quite closely.
Thoughts?
It's interesting because when that whole thing sort of came out, when he came out and said, I'm not going to use these made up pronouns and all this stuff, there were a lot of articles in like liberal and Canadian media basically saying, this guy is a meanie, why can't he just play nice? And then for a while, they were kind of obsessed with him. But after a while, they just kind of stopped covering him. But his YouTube channel has blown up like exponentially. Like he's really popular on YouTube. He does a lot of talks. So yeah, I don't know what to say. It's interesting.
Okay, well, I'll contemplate the case a little bit, and then that might provoke some things. So, and also my own take on it. So, first of all, I'll just give my opinion on Jordan Peterson. He's a Baiji. He seems strongly developed. He has religious views, obviously, that I don't hold myself, and I believe he is overall brilliant and good-hearted. But when he gets into the area of religion, you'll see that his ability to keep logical and, you know, reason flow, it is down from his other areas. But overall, a very impressive person, and particularly on this topic. So for me, the issue that he brings up, I think, is important because it is a free speech issue. And people say it's a meanie issue. It's not. It's two things: forensics and free speech. These are two things I must have, even in my progressive view on things. And it's that if you require me to use someone's desired pronoun, you're forcing me into their narrative.
Right.
Now, some people take the tact of, I'm going to call you what I want to call you.
Right.
That's like a very, strong position the other way. Myself, I'm sort of a humanist. I try to, make the whole human experience as best as it can be. So I like to be accommodating.
Right.
But there's a difference between accommodating and deferential.
Right.
And so I'm in this middle area where if you are very attached to something, an identity, I would like to accommodate that. I forget who said this. It wasn't Peterson, it was someone else, but it's on the same subject of, if my friend wants to be called, Pink Bunny,
right.
I will call them that.
Right.
But I don't do that for everyone, and I can't be made to do it.
Right.
If I like a person enough and I realize their real name is Thomas Jefferson, which is kind of a boring name, and they're like, I actually like to be called, T Jeff, and you're like, okay, T Jeff, because I like you, I know you, I'm willing to spend that effort. But it's this dominance of insisting I give life force, I give headspace, that really I don't think it's reasonable to ask of me.
Right.
So, for example, this is like the line I've noticed. Using a pronoun like they or it.
Right.
So if you don't, this is how my G takes it personally, my code of conduct. If you say this part of interaction raises an awkward point for me, it makes something that may be a trigger for me.
Right.
Then, this could be anything. Okay, I'm willing to skip that, to go around it and not deal with it.
Right.
So that's as far as I'm willing to go. I'm like, okay, kind of like if I have a vegetarian friend or something, I'm like, okay, well, if we are only hanging out infrequently,
right,
then I don't mind actually having vegetarian fare for like one meal.
Right.
Because I could enjoy that. Doesn't really upset my flow. As compared to, taking on more of that than I feel comfortable with, then it makes things awkward.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So then it would be like, okay, maybe we just don't do meals together. Right. So I kind of equate it like that as far as like my, Zai principle understanding is if that was like an issue, we could still be friends in every other way. Is I said, oh, on the meal thing, we kind of don't really do that so much.
Right.
Just to make things smoother. Okay, so if I realize that you have a thing with the pronouns and you're like, I don't like to do that, I'm like, all right, fine, then we'll go with it or they. It's a bit awkward to me, but not outside my range of willingness to accommodate somebody.
Right.
But then saying, no, call me they, call me she. Even if she and she, call me this. Okay, but see, that's different than let's, kind of like good friends. There's certain conversations you're like, we have 99 great conversations, but there's one conversation topic that goes bad. As friends, you just tend to not talk about that. There's so many other things that you agree on to talk about. So that's kind of like making us talk about that one thing we may not agree on and insisting that I agree on your narrative.
Right.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? That's kind of how I take it myself, like personally.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot I could say about it. One thing is that I think when it comes to freedom of speech, like it's one thing to say that people shouldn't say certain words, like people shouldn't say the N-word or something, but it's a whole other story to like force somebody to use certain words. And Jordan Peterson also points out that like these aren't even words that developed organically, these made up pronouns. They're just like invented from, who knows where. And suddenly you're expected to memorize like 50 of them and remember who wants to be called what.
For sure.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to mention too is that I've talked to a lot of people who like lean liberal or consider themselves leftist or whatever, like even people who are extremely accommodating with this pronoun issue. And literally every person that I've talked to has admitted at some point that they don't really understand these pronouns, that they think it's delusional, that they're just doing it to be polite. And there's something about that I also don't, like, I understand being polite, but if somebody is so delusional that they're having a hard time functioning in regular society, I don't know that you're doing them a favor by playing along with their delusion.
Yeah, and actually,
there has to be a certain point.
Excellent.
You know?
Yeah, I see that both on the individual scale and the tribal scale. So like you're saying, individual, I don't necessarily think they're getting much of a favor by indulging their delusion.
Right.
But then also the whole tribe then watches some people indulging delusion. Those people who indulge in delusion are seen as, heroic, i.e. virtue signaling, and
Right.
they then imitate that. And so now you have a whole tribe that does that as a practice.
Yeah.
But it wasn't good for the first individual's case.
Yeah. That's the other thing too, is that like I have nothing against transgender people, but I also believe there's a lot of people jumping onto this bandwagon because it's become trendy and you know. Yeah.
Exactly. So again, I've always come from it. I grew up reading comics, and my spirits really liked things where heroes would go into like different dimensions or worlds or outer space, and there was just different sentient life, being heroic, being productive, but doing it in their own way. And I'd like to be cool with that. But then I check that with reality. Those two things have to connect. So yeah, like on the gender thing, it's just not true to say that it's a spectrum. I forget the exact wording that Peterson used, but basically I think it was like a modified bimodal thing. Yeah, modified bimodal, which is basically yes. I mean, you can look in the animal world, including the human species, but pretty much all the other animals you can look at, especially the ones that are related to us, even like reptiles, even. I mean, so that's to say that when 99% of most of the natural world operates this way, that is a spectrum. And two things. It's a spectrum. This brings another one, so connected, but it's separate. This brings up whole other issues. But that is sexist.
Yeah.
Like it's sexist to actually point out that female creature is doing that, like, because that's getting to the point of like, is it that are we just going to say you cannot even videotape nature being nature? Like I can't even like have like a videotape of animals being animals because it offends people's sensibilities. It's weird.
Actually, I work part-time for my university, and we all had to go to this like day of like workshops and stuff, and most of it was just about like building up your resume and kind of boring stuff. But the last workshop or talk that we had was about diversity. And some of it was reasonable. Like some of it was about making the school website accessible to blind people, like by having a thing read out loud stuff. So that was totally reasonable. But then this woman who like, I don't know how old she was, but she looked like she was about 30 or like early 30s. She said she had a 2-year-old son. And she told us that if her son goes out to the playground, she tells him, don't point to somebody and say that's a boy. Because what if that person really feels like a girl on the inside?
See what I'm talking about.
So, she tells her son to call everybody a they until that person tells her son what they identify as.
Now,
so I know that's extreme, but that's kind of where this is going. Like, it's getting there.
It is because I think it needs to be kind of stated as sort of like, see, there's two kinds of offense going on. And this is the problem, is only one's being mentioned or is being mentioned much larger. So in the example you gave there, the offense is you might offend that person's belief that they are some other gender than you may initially surmise them.
And that's in the very statistically small chance that they are transgender. I mean, we're talking about a tiny population here. You
hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I was going to say. I'm like, you're offending truth, though. I mean, so two things are being offended here, not just one. So to act like that, two things. One, that offense outweighs you actually being true, and then to not mention, to omit the fact that is statistically extremely rare.
Right.
I mean. And again, because my spirits sort of raised me that I really try to be accommodating of anyone's, way they want to play their character. You know what I mean? I love character customization. Go for it. But it's when you try to change reality and then force others to accept it. It's interesting. Both sides call each other. I think they both are fascist. They basically want mental capitulation. In that scenario you just gave, it's basically being told like, this is a delusion some people have. You need to respect the delusion and not even call it a delusion. You just call it a belief.
Yeah.
Okay, but a belief, okay, this gets getting like the crux of it. Beliefs can be challenged, and beliefs that have, and truths that have a lot of evidence for or against them, that should be mentioned. It's funny. It's all connected, Maya. It's all connected. Is like the climate change thing where they say like some scientists on both sides. No, it's like a whole bunch on one side with better credentials against a bunch of ones that aren't so great with lesser credentials. I mean, it's like amazing, but that narrative is like treat them fairly. I can't. This gets into church and state. You know what I mean? State is based on. It's almost like the SS index. The state is the zez and the vez, and then you know what I mean. The church is like the stuff that you can't pin down with facts.
Yeah.
And evidence. Oh, this gets me so riled up. But the two crimes always happen. One is that there is a omission or a lessening of the importance or of the abundance of evidence in one thing's favor. And then even if that is given at all, the other thing, their feelings still outrank possible truth that you have a lot of good evidence for.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they say, you don't know that, and how can you actually ruin someone's thing or be so insulting or blasphemous to them on something you don't even know for a fact? Well, that's not exactly what's going on here. Oh, do you want to say something?
Well, actually kind of related to this, like the transgender thing has really blown up recently in the media and in terms of just like general public discourse. And here in Canada, we have this thing called CAMH, which stands for Center for Addiction and Mental Health. It's like a series of mental health and addiction hospitals, and they also do like a lot of research. So here in Toronto, they have this gender identity clinic that deals with transgender people and especially children. And there used to be this doctor that worked there. I think his name was like Ken Zucker or something. He was really good, had like a lot of like really looked up to in the field and had done a ton of research and everything. And what he found was that when little kids come in and say that they want to be the opposite sex or that they want to be like a third gender or whatever else, that if you just let them grow up, 80 to 90% of them actually will like adjust to their biological sex by the time they're adults, so they won't want to be transgender anymore. And then for the minority who do want, like when they're adults, they can do that. That's fine.
Yeah.
But his point was that like, let's take it easy with the hormones and the surgery and all this stuff on kids. Because a lot of them, whoa, my cat just like jumped up. I'm sorry about that. A lot of them don't know what they want. And some of them change their minds. And he was working for a long time, and a lot of parents really had good experiences bringing their kids to him and everything. And just recently, this group of extreme activists basically caused him to lose his job because they said that what he was doing was akin to gay conversion therapy on kids, that he was like trying to take the transness out of kids or something.
Right.
And they made up all this stuff, and there was all this stuff in the media about how evil he was, and he lost his job now. So.
Yeah, see, to me that doesn't make sense because, like, if you equate it to taking the gayness out, for example, all you're saying is to me, it's just I want people to have the best opportunities. I'm trying to look out for fellow humans.
Yeah.
You don't know what you want till you're 18, and it's not you making the decision. Really, it's both by your mental capacity, mental and emotional, capacities, and the fact that they run your life, they own you, so to speak. I mean, you're their ward practically. Then it seems like you would make that decision at 18 because you don't send someone to war before then. They're not a full grown-up.
Like I saw this meme on the internet. Somebody wrote that kids who still believe in Santa Claus are making like permanent, irreversible decisions about what sex they want to identify.
Oh,
like it's kind of crazy.
It is. It's horrible, but ironically true. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh, on the sex thing is that you can't take it back. Why wouldn't you wait until a little later and you can see how that develops?
Right.
And there's a trend that I've seen, and again, I naturally am inclined to accept other people's stories. I want to be as accommodating as I can for whoever their story is, but I can't ignore truth.
Right.
Just bad ideas are bad ideas. So there was a quiz sample, maybe Amon Ra, he was a theremin player, but he comes to mind. But I've seen it in a lot of other places. The fact they don't know about the human qualia phenomenon, they're not aware of that people have innate energetic preferences, and then the mode of journalism is that does not line up with all cultures are some aspect of the human experience that was calcified and codified, and now everyone's living in that moonscape. So the theme of I'm more successful, I'm more successful as this other thing. And so wanting to be that. So to me, it seems like we need to make sure everyone knows what quality is, they know what their quality is, and they love that. And then that means they love themselves. You have to get to a love yourself state before making decisions about I'm not in the right body.
Right.
But I tend to always go like, women's rights on abortion, things like that. It's like you have the right to do what you want with your body, but there should be an awareness. You should be aware of what you're doing, what might happen hormonally, this and that, and then you make your decision as a grown-up. I don't know. What your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. And I there have been feminists that have made this really interesting argument that some of this extreme transgender stuff is actually kind of sexist, if you think about it, because what they're doing is if they're taking, like, for example, boys who like to play with dolls, and they're saying, well, if you like to play with dolls, you must really be a girl on the inside. Like, it's based on these like stereotypes, And I'm not saying there aren't any genuine transgender or transsexual people, but it's just, I think part of the boom that we're seeing is based on people not being comfortable with like gender nonconformity. And so instead of just accepting that some boys might like to play with dolls or some girls might be aggressive, they're saying, well, we have to give them hormones and surgery and all this stuff.
To make them fall in line with the, that's a very good point. It really is.
Yeah,
just like in the Islamophobia thing, that's actually racist. It's ironic, it's like that shows you don't even know how racism works. The ideas aren't racist.
Right.
So, because that's actually basically saying that certain races and certain ideologies are inseparable.
Right.
That's just incredibly stupid. So I find troubling also, kind of like religions do. They're trying to get the kids.
Yeah.
Jimmy, like hormone therapy, when you still are shooting up with hormones from the, what you already have in you. Why?
Yeah. Like here in Ontario, we recently got a new sex ed curriculum, and most of it's fun. Most of it's just like age appropriate. Like it's similar to what it was before. But one of the things is that they added in new gender identity stuff. And like, so in grade 3, when kids are like 8 or 9 years old, they tell kids, they show them this like spectrum of like pink to blue. And they say, well, if you're a boy who likes to play with dolls, you might be like trans feminine or something. Like they don't tell them you should get hormones and therapy or surgery, but they tell them like your brain is female or something.
They're preparing them. Yeah. They're psychologically preparing them for the operation to come.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So actually, this is great. We had a great conversation here, Maya. I didn't even touch on the point I was going to actually make with Peterson, because I was actually going to go with the campus thing. But this is great. I wanted this conversation to go wherever it's going to go, because that would be the most awesome. But what caught my attention about him, I knew about him academically from some other things I'd heard him mention and things I'd read. Right. But as far as like a video viral thing, I was like, who's this Peterson thing? Was him basically being accosted on campus by people who were against his views. And the thing that really bothered me was, well, he conducted himself really well. This will be a recurring theme. I will probably do some more of these filming at some point in the future, and you'll notice a theme of people I admire. And I try to emulate this myself, try to be like this. I've been doing this since I was a wee child. And one of the things is fair play.
Right.
And the ability to accept it and do well at it.
Right.
And it really struck me, and this is where fascists are like the things I can't stand because they are against this, is you just have certain power that's in power like a cancer, and it just wants to stay there and eat. And so everything is geared toward just making sure the organism currently feeding off everyone else stays feeding off everyone else. But those who want higher truth, they are comfortable with free speech. transparency, and debates where you speak, I speak, counterpoint, counterpoint. I've got no problem letting someone talk as much as they want, as long as you give me the same amount of time. And you can beat down all my points as much as you want. But I noticed when people feel the need, they had to shout over someone else, and they have to intimidate them with crowds. They have to say blasphemy laws are going to make you lose your job, possibly go, pay fines and maybe prison if you refuse those fines. Because that's happening in Canada, I believe, right? There's legislation being batted about, like for blasphemy laws.
Yeah, there's it's a motion, so it's not like an actual law, like you can't get arrested for it or anything. So a motion just basically means it's something that the government recommends, but it basically like discourages criticism of, they try to bring all religion in, but it really focuses on Islam in particular. So, but I still think it sets the wrong tone. Like it's not,
it's like a cultural normalizing of that, normalizing not pointing out bad ideas. I think, doesn't everyone agree that Christianity today, it could be better? Yeah. But it's way better than it was before. Okay, so that's the thing of Christianity. Islam has all the same problems Christianity had from the beginning. Years ago. Plus a few more, and hasn't reformed at all, hardly. So it's like, are we not supposed to say that? And again, saying that I'm racist or this, I'm like, but I'm just saying facts. Okay, right here. Not that this, for my thinking, I am estranged from my family, but I was a period of time that I did hang out with them for like 2 decades, and my older sister was married to a Persian man, and he was awesome. He and I were like, he was like an older brother to me. I didn't have a brother. He was like my older brother. He was awesome. But I noticed the same thing. Even him, and he really was in general a progressive kind of guy. Yeah. But when it come on the issue of Islam, he would just get stupid. You know what I mean? And like he would like feebly, and he's a very funny, very intelligent guy. He would feebly attempt to try to make that make sense. And normally he could make things make sense easily, even with great wit. But here all of a sudden he can't do that anymore. It's like, don't you notice when all your faculties, all your demand for fairness and evidence just leaves you? Oh, were you saying something?
Oh, no. Okay. I was just like nodding along,
Cool. But yeah, they basically confronted him on the campus. This is one of my many campus clips I thought I was going to have Chris talk about. And he kept being reasonable. And they did I know everyone knows this, but it just needs to be said. I feel like I need to say it publicly. I clearly observed on video an individual trying to have a reasonable conversation / debate with you. And you're just trying to have a haranguing session saying it's a dialogue. Being harangued by mainly poor facts, poor reasoning. I mean, so there's two things. One, the argument is not a good argument. But even if it was a good argument, this is actually like a haranguing. This is not a discussion. This is an intimidation session. I had like visceral, like just like ugh, seeing humans do that to another human. It's like, can't you tell he's very intelligent and that his heart's in a good place, even if he's wrong? Like, for example, Peterson is wrong on Christianity, but I heard him talk about it. He's my favorite person I've ever heard talking about why they like being a Christian. I still disagree, but he's a very reasonable person. His reasons for doing it and so forth are very well thought out and very humanistic. So, like, I get where you're coming from. Still disagree. So, like, I don't see how they don't see him as like, he doesn't have any hatred for these transgender, possibly transgender. You know what I mean? He's just saying that not all wannabe transgenders are meant to be doing that. Yeah. That a lot of them are confused / bandwagoning. Yeah. And how could you possibly look at the situation and not say that's true? So really, he's not saying don't have transgenders or transgenderism does not exist in nature. I've never heard him take any position like that. Right. So in fact, he seems to be very humane on people who actually need things to help them out or are experiencing different things than the majority of, they're having an anomalous life. Right. It's like, I get that. And then we should help them out as best we can and recognize them that they're a hero too. But then this is another thing. This seems like a lot of people are going like, I want to be a girl just because they say that. Lots of people go, look at that boy accepting his female inner true self. I'm like,
his inner feminine side,
exactly. It's like, that's clapping for the wrong reasons, and now you've got some confused people. But which is connected to a very real issue, but that real issue, there's two very real issues. A real issue of actual complex issues with sexuality, that actual conversation, and then a lot of people really confused about it. And then third, those people trying to force other people to accept their quite possibly confusion.
There was I think it was about 2 years ago, or maybe a year and a half ago. It was in the news, especially like in Canada, but actually all over the world. There was this guy who not only did he decide, first he decided he was a woman, then he decided he was going to be a 6-year-old girl.
Sorry, wait, real quick. People heard me giggle there. I did not giggle that he thought that.
Okay.
I giggled because
you knew it was going somewhere weird.
She said he first thought that. I actually giggled. That's how I was giggling at. She said, first he thought like, oh.
So he decided to be a 6-year-old girl. And he had a wife and a bunch of kids. He ditched all of them, went to live with this family who like, they were taking care of a grandchild and he was playing with her. And like, it was interesting because there's like this LGBT news source based in Toronto. This guy's from Toronto. And there's this LGBT news source in Toronto, and they posted like a video interview with him on YouTube, thinking that like people would be okay with that. And like even other gay and transgender people were like, what the hell is this? Like, this guy's mentally ill. Like,
yeah, exactly. And it's wrong to say that. And it's that's what I'm talking about. Like, I like to like really know what people think. And so like, it's interesting when you get actual sort, like for example, like on Islam. I've listened to both sides of the argument from people, and of the people that were for and against on the for Islam, I listened to the craziest, fanatical, most conservative to the most reformist, progressive oriented ones. And on the other side, I listened to like Christian arguments, I listened to atheist arguments, I listened to military, geopolitical, commercial arguments. And so it's just interesting that when you do that, you come away with a story that neither side agrees with. I heard this saying once, and it really has held true in so many philosophical and psychological senses, that a fair deal leaves everyone slightly dissatisfied. Disappointed. That's a good word. Thank you. Leaves them slightly disappointed. That's a better word. Leaves them slightly disappointed. And that lesson plays out. Everyone wants a reality that's not true because it favors them to a degree that nature doesn't accommodate that. Like nature made all the 16 qualia designs, the 32 gender mojos, and all the variants on that, and made all that. But still, there's a way to it. So there's a love for diversity, but there's not this, I can just be whatever I want. I can be a different gender. I can be a different race. I can be a different mojo. I can just, you can't say that, like for example, don't say that I'm 5'2". You're actually putting me in a box as a short man. It's like, I mean, that's getting ridiculous now. I have to be able to observe the world and in my own head, allowed to have my own thoughts on it and then speak those thoughts.
Yeah, I was just thinking it might be a good thing that like the mojo phenomenon isn't like known about in the mainstream yet, because I guarantee if it was, there would be people who claim they're like trans mojo or something. For sure. And that's why, and that's also why I want so badly to get the Rosetta Stone cleared up, because the less, I'm being public though, so if anyone wants, they can correct my work now, but the less people that actually are correcting this and this work on their own, once the Rosetta Stone is set in, they're not going to be able to say they really had any part in its creation. And that's critical, because, like now, how many religion, I think, like Christians and Islam, Muslims, and pretty much most religions, they take their sacred texts and they pathetically attempt to make them look like predictions for modern science. Right.
Do you know what I mean? So that's just something humans do. So they're all be floundering, trying. For example, I had a person who was here hanging around for a while that was trying to be nice, but in a Islamic apologist sort of way, and trying to say that somehow what I'm doing is because like Allah did this. That's first popped in my mind, but that person actually wrote me like a letter. But a lot of other people on the forums were like Christians and different things. They're like, you know, be thankful that, you know, Buddha is giving you this insight. Be thankful that God gave you those gifts. It's like, pathetic, all pathetic. Oh, goodness. So that's just the first one of our tour through college campus land. All right, so next up, this may have even happened at, okay, so just to touch back to the point, like on the thing is, I'm looking for a group of people, and right now they seem to be calling themselves classical liberals or humanists.
Right.
Is people who they don't want to be stingy with their resources. They want to help fellow humans out. So both as far as like sharing what they have and being accepting of other people's stories, they are pro that. But they are also insistent on free speech and evidence.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think classical liberal is a good label for that.
Nice. So that's what I would consider myself. Then you have these kind of various code of conduct things that really bother me. I pay attention to the code of conduct of people from various models, because I guess in the various earliest, when I was, you know, I was raised Christian. My parents weren't really very strict at all in that way, but I went to strict school. The school was very strict. So my parents were very not strict, so it made for an interesting headspace. But long story short is, I noticed behaviors of people doing it. And I'm like, it seems like if this was actually the right blueprint for how to make a human a better human, it would help that person more. It seems like there's like misogyny. You know what I mean? My Spirit's Nexian Serenity. They quickly point out, like, why are they being like that to those ladies? They're treating them as lesser for no good reason. And I looked, there was no good reason for them being treated like that, and that bothered me. And so I'm like, which is why it's interesting now that the feminists no longer hold that moral high ground, because that's pretty much how I've been always thinking. I was thinking they're being oppressed. There is that to a degree, but not the way it's being said now.
Right.
But long story short is focusing on their character. Like right there, I'll go back to the Jordan Peterson thing, but right there on the feminist thing is, if you look at the character of just what they do with their lives and how they express themselves between first wave, second wave, and third wave feminists, they're different creatures. They're there for different reasons, and I don't agree with the same reasons and the way they go about doing it. So same thing here is like with Peterson, just not wanting to listen, because they'll say, tell me your points, tell me your points. He's like, well, boom, boom, boom. And as soon as he starts going boom, 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 they cut him off. They jump over. They will not, because he sits there and listens to them go like, okay, so tell me what you thought, and I'll tell you my thoughts. They do not want to give equal exchange. Okay, so another beat on that kind of poor morality, and by the way, I'm actually, a lot of guys have been saying this that are kind of like the classical liberals are saying, the reason why we're beating up on current liberals so much is because I used to just say I was a liberal, but now I have to actually specify, because I'm totally not conservative, you know, on most issues, but I'm way different than what most people are calling liberal nowadays. And so there's a greater need to point it out. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just kind of like with also typology, which I hope to have a friendly relationship in the future, if possible. We'll see. But greater distinction need to be made between what they're doing and what we're doing than, for example, monotheism. Now, in part of the proclamation, there is a section on CNC, and as a part of that, you know, various monotheistic principles are brought up. We talk about how we view them, but it's fairly obvious pretty quickly that they're coming from different headspaces. But there you had to make that distinction a bit more. So anyway, with Peterson, they were not allowing him to speak, and then Laura Southern was at another, may have been the same one or somewhere else. But she basically was struck at by a protester in the crowd.
I think that was the same one. She was assaulted at that. I mean, it wasn't like the person grabbed the mic out of her hand and like shoved her, but that was at the same event. And it's interesting because like I follow a lot of stuff on Facebook, and this happened at the University of Toronto, and I don't go to that university, but I saw an article written by the person who assaulted Lauren Southern. And I can send it to you later. The entire article was basically just whining about how this person is a victim. Like they consider themselves the real victim in this scenario, and about how now they're being charged with like assault charges, and they can't go to the same political protests as her. Like they have, I don't know if it's considered a restraining order, but they basically can't be around her in public. And this person was whining that their freedom to be involved in political stuff is being curtailed because of this. Well, it's like, well, don't assault people. Like,
well, my goodness, give you so much to unpack there. Yeah, please do send that to me. I would like to see that.
Yeah.
So on that, I noticed like so many. You gave me another set here. I was already going to say that it was clearly observable to me several character errors.
Right.
That make me think I don't want to be aligned with this cause, which is, first, Laura Southern was being reasonable. She's very careful to be friendly, to be polite and equal in exchange, and to just let people talk. And she really doesn't try to, her thing is she lets them just be themselves and then reports it.
Right.
So the grabbing of the mic was a power move for ego and also a fear bite, because just her presence, and this gets into a whole other thing, which is they don't like media in general. They don't like being observed. They don't even like just general people with their cell phones to video them. They hate it. And it's because they're being awful. That there's no around. You're being awful, and you just don't be filmed being awful. Real quick, and I'll throw it back to you here.
Sure.
So what happened is, one, she was doing nothing wrong. There's absolutely nothing to instigate that attack. Then it panned up to him. There's like a slow-mo on the thing I was watching. And
by the way, I think this person considers themselves a woman, but like I've looked at this person a bit on Facebook, and I don't like saying this, but they kind of look mentally unhinged a bit. So
gotcha.
Make of that what you will. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the first person, I apologize, ain't there, but the first, and I don't even know if I should apologize, but because I don't know this conversation well enough to make sure my code of conduct is where it should be. That's what I want to talk about. I want to clear my headspace up, and I want my code of conduct to be sure-footed in a humane way. So, sure-footed humaneness. And this conversation is making this cloudy, so I want to uncloud it. But on that is, this person looked like this is a very soft read, but looked like a Ziny.
Okay.
It's the really lean one, right? The very lean one with the dark hair.
Yeah. They're kind of like brown, like lightish brown skinned. Very lean, very skinny.
Yeah. So I think I'm probably the same person. So he did that. So first there was, she was doing nothing to make that. Plus, two things. She was doing nothing wrong in general.
Right.
And more than that, this is my G, kind of like how does the G math. There's Z math and G math. My G's like, she was not doing anything wrong, and she was the minority. She could very easily be in fear of her safety at the numbers. The numbers were so skewed. Her safety, anyone would feel nervous. So then to attack that just seemed like anyone doing that is wrong. Second, you slow-mo to this person's face and glee.
Yeah, I was just gonna say there's so much glee. Like
so much glee. It's disgusting. Not like right was done, I had to do that. Even like a fierce anger of like, oh, you made me have to do this. It was like, it was just delicious vampire.
And also I wanted to mention that let's say this person is a Ziny. Even if that's true, and like it's still basically somebody who was born male attacking a woman, and like feminine people who lean feminist or whatever would usually be against that kind of thing. But because it's like this like trans whatever person, and because Lauren Southern is conservative, they've justified it to make it seem like it's okay.
That's a great point, and that's a second one that kind of goes with the one I was taking away from what you said about his letter response or his text response.
Right.
I was going to mention that the arguments he's using for victimhood that you mentioned, that would apply to Laura Southern more than him and first before him in series of events.
Right.
And then what you just point out here is another one, kind of like there's like Zai principles. There's also like Zhai moral principles. You have to, if it's a good principle, it should be used in every situation. That's the way you weigh each situation, not just the situation you like, and you change the scales when it's another situation. because they left their morals, like you were saying just now. Isn't that actually anti-woman?
Yeah.
It's amazing that all of a sudden that doesn't matter. No, if it's a good principle, then it matters.
Yeah.
So anyway, first on him, he was wrong to do it all because she was not in any way a target that you should go for. Then the Glee. Then he comes in jackass number 2. It looked like a Xenai behind him, short, more stocky.
Oh, the person with the yellow hat?
I think so, yes, glasses.
Yeah.
Her Glee. She's just getting off on him getting off.
Said, I didn't see anything, officer.
Yes, and then she lies gleefully.
Yeah.
Oh, that whole series was amazing. And then it continues. Oh, there's like 8 of these. It's amazing, Maya. So the first 2 is him.
Yeah.
Him doing it to the wrong target, his Glee, then her Glee, and then her lying for bad reasons. Then his response.
Yeah.
His response is like, I'm like, how? I know you've been stupid clearly up till then, because that was bad reasoning and bad code of conduct character.
Right.
But some people are just really super deluded. Not that it forgives them, but someone needs to check them. And then often the person will resist that first checking until a second person says, no, I see what they're seeing.
Yeah.
And then you can build on that. But like there's the end of this. And that is an undoctored photo or video. That is an undoctored photo or video of you being an asshole.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can explain that away. I mean, that was you being an asshole. You're like out of context. There's no context for doing that. It's amazing. And then on top of that, of him, there's tons of people that are on that side that he's on YouTube, watching that, him being an asshole, her being an asshole, and then saying they were the wrong party. Like, you're denying reality that is literally playing in front of your face on loop. It's there for you to observe. That's what happened.
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things too about this mentality and this like regressive leftist worldview is that they view any group that they consider a minority, so women, people of color, trans people, whatever, they view these people as permanent victims of like quote unquote the system. Sorry, my cat is like in the way.
It's all good. Nice.
Sorry, I'm just gonna try to get him out of the way.
Technical difficulties, girl.
Come on, King. Come on.
Cats can be persistent. And
Okay, there we go.
There we go. Nice.
Okay. So they view minorities as permanent victims of like an invisible, all-pervasive system. So whenever a minority commits any kind of violence or strikes out in any way, they view it as self-defense, even if like it doesn't make sense. And it's like what we saw with the Jordan Peterson rally. Right. Like it doesn't make sense to call that self-defense, but they consider it that because they view the trans person as a victim from the get-go. And
and that's just, there's just 2 things. There's not data to support the way they're describing it,
right?
Because on both their end, there's clearly some of them that have serious things that they need to discuss and work through on, like the sexuality subject. Right. And then there are others that are just confused about what's going on, and they will give zero ground on that. Because just for me, obviously, because I've never really been conservative, is that the conservative view is like they're all mentally ill.
Right.
And even the ones that aren't mentally ill and it's a biological thing, they are defective.
Right.
Okay, that's like I clearly don't hold that view. So in case I'm wondering, like, oh, he's like a right wing. No, to me it's so obvious I don't hold anything like that. But over here, I feel the need to distinguish, because if you listen to me talk, Martian Manifesto, Podler Theory, I'm like pro-equal rights, pro-equal rights, pro-equal rights, pro-equal rights does not equal pro-equal outcome.
Right.
So that needs to be finely distinguished, clearly distinguished. Because what they want is a power move. Again, Maya, you'll probably get tired of me bringing this up, but I can't help it.
No, it's all good.
this story. It's a comic story. The Incredible Hulk. The Incredible Hulk. He gets taken out to outer space on this planet where the Reds are subjugating the Greens.
Right.
And so they throw him into like, you know, a gladiatorial prison because he's green. He busts out of prison, gladiator style, and he becomes the king of the area. He says, peace for all. He heads back home. He looks up with his telescope into the sky to see it, hoping to see something better than Earth, better than our race relations. And he sees the Greens enslaving the Reds. And that has like stayed with me and been very accurate in so many areas. Everyone wants to get back, but they don't want fair. They want two things which are not right. One is more than you deserve, which is wrong, obviously, and revenge.
Right.
And revenge just isn't helpful. It's, I mean, at a certain point, you have to tell you that, you know, like in a person's life, like the desire for revenge, it takes over your life. The same thing for a whole, you know, culture or species. That just takes over the whole conversation, the whole headspace. It's all about getting them back, getting them back. And then you're going to inflict wounds that will insist that someone else's legacy is to get back at you for having done what you did.
Right.
Because myself, I had a visceral reaction to that happening to her.
Right.
And then I was so angry that when that police officer came up, and him was listening to me over the years, I'm not, you know, super cuddly with cops. They make me nervous, always have. Although I know a lot of them are doing a good job, but they're just the uniforms in general make me queasy. Okay, but with that said, that guy, cop's just trying to do his job. Lawrence Southern was being, I don't think, very histrionic for what happened to her, happened for no reason, and is still surrounded by a hostile crowd. So she's being reasonable, he's being reasonable, and then you're just lying to just get your way. You know what I mean? Like the whole thing was just ugly. Oh, but this gets to the visceral reaction.
Mm-hmm.
It would be challenging. I would like to think that I could, but it would be challenging not to want to grab either of them or both of them and give them a good shaking. Yeah, punch them in the face. But I'm like, a minimum, like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, just shake them. Yeah.
It literally, I mean, it almost feels like nature built humans to shake other humans when they get so stupid. You know what I mean? I don't want to kill you or anything. I don't even want to hurt you at all. I want to make you stop being so awful. Please, please, please stop being an awful human. It's just, and it's like, but if you do that, and obviously things could escalate and go bad with that, then they're saying, oh, look what you did, look what they did. So to me, it's like good behavior should be applicable in general.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, your way of being nice and polite and cordial, you should just do that all the time. It shouldn't be like that's out of context. Well, you really shouldn't be doing that. Now, granted, if you do one bad thing and you do 100 good things and they only show the bad thing, I get the out of context thing, but still, it is part of what happened.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, out of context doesn't mean, people, it's a little mental thing people always do. I know they're lying to me. Whenever someone says that's out of context and they move on, they're lying. Little tip for life there, Maya. My dad was very good as an investigator. When they say that, they're usually lying. If they say that's out of context, here's the correct context, it doesn't always mean that they're telling the truth. More often than not that it does. And even if they're lying, they're much more educated liars. At least they're more competent and are willing to have a discussion, because they don't just say that's racist, move on. You have to say why that's racist and then have evidence. You can't just say that and move on. That's not how it works. That's basically saying, I don't want to talk about this. Shut up.
Yeah.
So there's the Peterson thing. So then what do we have next here? Oh, goodness, so many. Okay, this one might not take long to talk about, but I had to mention it because it's all over the place. But this gets back into the, do you really want to be like this person? Because normally when people like point to like, you know, conservative right-wing people and you're like, would you want to be like this? Throughout my life, you know what I mean? I was into like, you know, comics with heroes that hung up aliens of all stripes. So I'm like, no, I don't want to be like them. But now it's like, would you want to be like these rally people at the Jordan Peterson protest? Like, no. I mean, like my first like reaction as a very skillful people reader is like, I don't like the energy coming off of you. It's really
Yeah.
ugly. And I don't, yeah, just the energy in general. And then when you talk, you break like all the rules of etiquette, all the rules of debate, all the rules of just fair play. You cheat. Exactly. Your energy's bad. And when you dialogue, you cheat. You say it's a dialogue, but it's not a dialogue. So it's like, because I notice like the people I like, you know, Dawkins, Sam Harris, yada, yada, those kinds of people,
Right.
they're more than willing to give you they will debate you in a 60-second soundbite versus theirs, all the way up to an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour debate plus Q&A at the end, plus let's go get food at the local buffet and keep talking. They have no problem going, and all the while giving you equal time.
Right.
Because nothing you say is going to move me, because unlike you, I actually already considered the data.
Right.
So I actually already know that. And even if you get a point on me, I'm willing to accept that from a little correction, I may have to make a little correction. All the way up to, I might have to change my mind publicly. Do you know what I mean? They're such punks, all of them. They're just so punkish, and they put themselves out as telling other people, and this is all the sides, telling other people how to be, but they show clear signs they're punks on improving themselves. It's like and then they want that weakness of character to be put into law and propped up.
Right.
State sanctioned weakness of character. Oh, that felt so good. Thanks for my little rant. I ran from time to time.
No worries.
So yeah, so this one, getting on that, is Trigglypuff. Are you familiar?
Yeah, I've seen Trigglypuff.
Now, this is key. I'm not making fun of Trigglypuff because, you know, she is a bit overweight, and it looks like she is probably an unhappy person.
Yeah.
Because in that way, I'm empathetic. But two things. She is being ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's just true. And people have the right to point out ridiculousness, even in people that you have empathy for.
Right.
Everyone is ridiculous on certain days and certain topics. It's just that's how it is to be a human. And the only way the entire species doesn't get stupid is making sure that no one voice gets to where it is making all of the decisions for all the different humans out there, because it just doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? You need there to be agreed upon data, and then from that, there is a fairness that can be outlaid. If you can't, exactly, like we can discuss opinions. I'm open to lots of opinions, but opinions come post fact.
Right.
They don't come pre fact, and they don't trump facts afterwards. They are. It's like in, you know, any kind of like most legal cases, you have hard evidence and you have soft evidence. Soft evidence is like extra footnotes of evidence outside the perimeter of the main evidence.
Right.
You know, DNA and film and such.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you had anything to say about Trigglypuff, if you thought it was mean. There's a lot of mean stuff that's done with her, and I personally wouldn't want to do that. But I do have a bit of a sense of humor, and it does beg you to like say something at least, you know, nicely teasing about it. At the minimum, it's a bit of a human being ridiculous. It is what it is. And then this also actually said too, and I'm not trying to make her out to be a bad person or anything like that, but it is an example of a certain way of thinking.
Yeah.
She basically was, and I think people are kind of getting on her for acting out physically.
Right.
The mental processes a lot of these people are having when they get triggered. Right. And it is not the accessing of any data and going, you're saying, just, you know, I was raised in a pretty much all black neighborhood except for my family for most of my life. So I am familiar with a lot of things that maybe some people aren't, and some people might not know that I am quite familiar with. So I am aware that there is a lot of prejudice. There's a lot of prejudice towards blacks. That's true. I've observed that throughout my life. There's also a lot of not prejudice that doesn't get talked about and gets mislabeled as prejudice or as, you know, subliminal micro aggressions. And then there's also reverse racism, which I've been told is not a thing. Being the only white family in an all black neighborhood for 20 years, I can assure you that that does exist. I'm not saying it was the prevalent thing because all my friends were black. So I pretty much, except my best friend was a suburban white guy, but all our friends were mainly black guys from training around the neighborhood. But so they had no whiff of that at all. They were totally like, color's not a thing, which was how we all were. But that was an element. So I'm willing to accept certain things are there, but then when they are presented outside the realm of reality and with intimidation, it always seems like those two kind of go hand in hand. They try to say you have no understanding of this.
Yeah.
That doesn't, like, this exclusive right to speak on certain subjects. I think it was a Douglas Murray, or was it somewhere else? Maybe it was Milo. But one of them, someone tried to get on them in a debate or a town hall style Q&A for trying to say thing about feminism when he's a man. Right. And then he had a nice return later on when he was talking about something about things that go on with men, maybe it was depression or something, and they tried to shine back, and he said, you can't speak on this because it's a man's issue and I'm a man, you're not.
Yeah.
And since I talk about this gets a whole other topic. As far as like the morality, I look for your Jai to help my G out of this one because it's a tricky little minefield to go here. I disagree, like I said, with most conservative stuff, and like take Milo, I don't agree with him in a lot of things, and I don't know if necessarily if as far as like a morality overall, if that's something I could be around for an extended period of time comfortably.
Yeah, he's a bit of a troll.
Yes. However, he is making some points that are true, and it's weird because this is where I guess provocateurs, they do serve their purpose for the species. He's saying some things that other people should be saying that I wish more liberal people were saying, but they're just too scared. They're scared of losing their jobs, but really I think before that is the guilt. They're afraid of being shamed, the shame ritual. So it's tricky because, like, for example, Donald Trump, I really did not want him to become president. I actually voted for Hillary, and I don't really vote, and I don't like Hillary. So that says a lot. But I thought he was a dangerous precedent. I still do. I think he's too dangerous to have experimented with. Mm-hmm. But I get why people wanted to. I really do. I myself, I think, was too dangerous to do, but I really get the sentiment, which is I'm not going to act like certain, which is funny because Donald Trump he's simultaneously, like, the most of the time, he's one of the worst liars I've ever heard in my life. Mm-hmm. I mean, he just lies all the time blatantly and not even very creatively. Mm-hmm. But he also is one of the few people talking truth about certain topics. It's interesting, you're saying?
No, I was just agreeing with you.
But yeah, so I'm really bothered by what I see as the kind of lack of heroic character in the mental processes. So with Trigglypuff, it does seem like even like quote unquote educated people that come out of a lot of these campuses, so not just the students, but a lot of these like champion professors that come out. Yeah, they're just talking so much dribble. Yeah, and it's like I didn't really do the college thing myself, but my dad did, and a lot of people that were friends of mine were very smart, had PhDs and so forth. And I'm like, I know how the basics of how you do it are. There's a minimum. In fact, the one thing that people agree about college does give you good, although there's a lot of complaints that are justified, is it does kind of train you to be a bit more professional, like how to like put your thoughts into reports and how to stay on a subject that maybe is not really interesting you right now, things like that. So you have these quote unquote professors, but they look like they've never actually been to a debate before, or that they've ever researched a paper the way you're supposed to research a paper, like the way they cite sources.
There was actually a thing in the news about my university recently, because so there's this professor who I actually signed up for one of her courses at one point, but had to drop it for scheduling conflicts. But she teaches various things about like sociology and gender and stuff. And students in one of her classes were supposed to write a paper. And one of the students was going to write about the wage gap and how it's not what like certain feminist organizations say it is, because there's a lot of factors and stuff like that. And so the professor emailed the student saying, you can't use business sources, you can't use government statistics, only use feminist sources.
Wow. I'm right there. I mean, that's state censorship. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And to me, I don't know. It's humans have a hard time with this. All humans, even myself, like with the purification. Obviously, I still have ways to go, and so it's something I deal with myself. But I think humans in general should try harder at it, which is being aware of that feeling that's taking you in a comfortable direction rather than a truthful direction. There's that feeling. You know what I mean? All humans, I mean, you've been around for a while here, Maya, as being Maya. You're aware of like how you think, and there's that feeling towards, I'm just looking at cold hard facts versus those were facts enough to make me feel okay with this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a different sensation, and every human, you know that there's a different feeling between those two activities. People need to be more tuned to that. Okay, so is that the end of your comment, Maya, on Trigglypuff?
Yeah, I was also just gonna say that if you look at like, I'm for women's rights and stuff, but if you look at a lot of like gender studies and women's studies, like websites and things that they write in course descriptions and stuff, they'll even say that their primary goal is to produce activists. It's not to find the truth.
Yes, exactly.
So like,
right there, it's a recurring argument that happens. In fact, in the CNC section of the Podler Proclamation, we go over a lot of different aspects of how this plays out. But there's a reoccurring theme of wanting to control the narrative and to feel good. And so, like, can you say what you said just again? Jog my memory.
That their primary goal is to produce activists. It's not to find the truth or to inquire or to.
Got you. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Basically, this consistent push that some narrative is so moving morally that it trumps truth. No. I took this away as a young kid watching Excalibur.
Right.
And, King Arthur asked Merlin, what is the greatest virtue in a knight? And as a young child, I understood really he's asking, what is the greatest virtue in a seeker? And Merlin thought about it. He's like, it's hard to say whatever. He's like, don't quibble, just give me one. Clear. For once in your life, give me a straightforward, non-metaphorical answer. And so Merlin's like, okay, if I had to make it one, truth. It has to be truth.
Yeah.
Because everything flows from truth, all empathy, all goodwill, loyalty, all helping out those who are in lesser places. Yeah, but based on reality, everything. Right. And so I know, like my family, a lot of good qualities, and but also things that were issues. One of them was the push for family first.
Right.
And you can make a very compelling case that family is more important than the law. Family is more important than other families. Family is more important than country, yada, yada, yada. You know what I mean? Family is more important than religion. So I was kind of taught like family. But family over truth, first of all, for moral reasons, no, it's not. Truth is actually more important from a moral reason. And two, no, it's not. You know why? Because no, it's not. You know what I mean? Like equals MC squared, regardless what happens with our family. You know what I mean? Family, good or bad, that's still going to be doing what it's doing. So, I mean, at no point does that story tell the overall story and the rules, the game rules of that story, what to do. It doesn't work like that. But yeah, so like there's family first, there's religion, but now, like you're saying, it's like this new religion. It's like this, and so they want basically faith-based arguments to back them up. Okay, I don't know how this happens, Maya. Maybe you could explain, because you're around a lot of the college people.
Yeah, well, actually, there's something I want to say about this, about their sort of ideological approach to this, is that, so I'll use feminism as an example just because I'm more familiar with it. So if you try to like point all this stuff out to them, what they'll say is that what people think is true is, like, they'll basically say that everybody because they'll claim we live in a patriarchal society, they'll claim that everybody has a patriarchal ideology. And so they'll claim what you're saying isn't just the truth, it's like a patriarchal truth. And so feminist analysis is the only way to like counter that. You know what I mean? Like, so
yeah, totally.
So it's not, they don't see themselves as like biased. They kind of see everybody as biased, but they see their bias as like more righteous because it's supposedly getting back at the injustice or whatever.
Okay, I'm gonna challenge that. Not you saying it. That was awesome. Thank you. But I'm gonna challenge that headspace. The people who have that headspace. I'm challenging you. Okay, two things came to mind. One is, well, first I'll actually go with the one that you made me think, and I'll do the one I was thinking before that, which is there has to be. One is I'm gonna state it as a truth. And then I'm going to state on how one's conduct would go with that truth and how not doing it. So the truth is this: there are certain data points that are just data points. Right. And so saying that you're 5'2" is not patriarchal. You're 5'2". Say, for example, saying there was slavery. That's true. That happened. Now, there's lots of opinions on why it happened, to what scale, and all the variations. Okay, then that's areas of speculation, and that speculation always has bias. Right. Great, totally. But there's certain things where there's like ledgers of stuff. There's a number of manacles. There's a number of overwhelming testimony. There's like certainly like, okay, that happened. We have bullets that showed that happened. So when you say those things and say you're telling this gets back to the thing I said before, but that context lie is you're painting a patriarchal picture. Like take Peterson. To me, he is trying to paint a Christian picture of the spiritual experience when he does it. But I could dialogue with him because he is trying to use solid points. He's just looking at them in a way that I think is overly weighted, and he's leaving out some other patterns that can contradict that. But I could build off that. He is agreeing to play the game of let's put evidence on the board, like a legal case. Let's agree to discovery process, and then we flush out that happened. But like people like they do this over like certain I guess it happens everywhere. I'm familiar with it from the Middle East, where they're actually like messing sometimes with like archaeological discoveries in order to tell different narratives. Like, can't you tell that's wrong? It is always wrong to just make shit up, because then humans think made up shit is reality. That's bad. I don't know how that is not just that's bad. So there's facts that are just facts that don't really fit. That's something too I notice about people I admire. They constellate the facts, including things that make their own position more challenging to hold, and just in general make things a bit more murky. There's not as much like I win or you win. It's a bit more combined. And so this resistance to listen to any fact, to accept a fact, and then now freedom of speech to even speak a fact. You can't. So if you say it, they won't inside. They're like, no, that's patriarchal bias. Yeah. No, it's not. I mean, just by the way, most of my life I consider myself a feminist for the reason that there's a lot of patriarchal bias. There is in the world. There clearly is. However, it's getting lesser all the time, and in the West, it's quite forward to the point that we're starting to swing over to the other side of that equation. Yeah, there's certain that's more accurate picture.
There are situations in which women are actually kind of advantaged, like in the family courts, and
while at the same time there are large swaths of the world that are really biased against women. So that's a more accurate picture of things. But like people are like, things are fine in general versus things are horrible all over. Neither one of those are true. And the fact that she will not give any kind of nuance on that is really troubling. And I'm going to use their words on them. It's offensive. Like the boy you said, use this because of this. You're trying to avoid offense. No, it's offensive that you're actually having this child's righteous mind and ability to speak as they want to speak encroached on because you're scared of being shamed inappropriately, and now you're trying to tell your child to be inappropriately ashamed. Right. I mean, to me, that subject that seems so speculative to definitely need to be considered like a religion in a way. And on that, I would say, not don't do it, but I would look for a case where there may be some more vagueness. And I would then point out something to be aware of, and that it's a thing.
Right.
But being aware that it's a thing, I'm not telling them what to do. I'm not saying what words to you. I'm just saying that's a thing. Like if people ask me my view on like religion, I think there's lots of different religions out there that may have some things that can help people. Myself, I just do Pod Lair all 4 degrees, but
Right.
I understand people may want those traditions to help them in certain ways. They do have things that can help. So with that said, my view is let the child be exposed to all of them.
Right.
Like just news on TV. You know what I mean? Like different countries doing different things. These are different ideologies doing different things, saying different things. And then at 18 and beyond, you decide what you want to be. I mean, you can decide, I guess, if you want, but I don't think anyone should be made to pick anything like that. Like you were saying, before their mind is developed. What's the analogy you gave about Santa Claus? It was great.
Yeah, kids who still believe in Santa Claus are making permanent decisions about what gender they're going to be, or
exactly. And see, like in Islam, they all do this, but Islam has, I think, the most extreme versions of it, where they have like kids who are still at that age, just flailing themselves around rhythmically, like at a rave,
right?
Basically doing like mantras of brainwashing. I mean, and you're like then saying, "Look how faithful they are." No, look how brainwashed they are. I mean, really, right. I mean, it's amazing how you are equating their loyalty. I mean, yeah, exactly. You're equating brainwashing with loyalty and acceptance. No, you broke their spirit and you brainwashed them. I mean, just say what you're doing. And this is key. That would be even if Islam had more merits than it does. And by the way, I do believe I'm really trying to hold out the possibility and hope that there could be a Pod Lair Islam that can happen. I definitely feel that for everyone else, because there's no other major doctrine that I'm aware of in any belief system or model of thought that says you don't reform. Right. Islam is the sole case of that. So it's pushing the limits of, next he asked me to find a way that I could bridge with seekers from other backgrounds. I'm like, okay, but they're all going to have to reform. Right. Don't need to be Pod Lair, whatever it is, Pod Lair Buddhism, accept certain things because they're just reality. But Islam is the only one that says you can't reform. So I'm curious if Islam is going to be able to reform, and then the non-reforming ones will make it to where that can flourish. Do you know what I mean? So there could be a large presence of reforming Muslims, because I think every faith, every speculation, right? It should be reforming. Whatever speculations you have, I reform my speculations every day, on the minute, sometimes on the second. So, same thing with beliefs of what happens with any question that you couldn't answer with facts. You need to think, I need to keep reforming that. There can be no just, it is known. It's a joke from the Game of Thrones, it is known. It's such a great line because it shows the ridiculous of it, because, Daenerys comes from a different city originally when she gets hooked up with the Dothraki, which are kind of like Mongols, or Mongol-esque. Right. And they have these rituals, and some of them are really stupid. They're just stupid. And then she's like, why do I have to do this? That makes no sense. And they're like, so-and-so in some generation is something to somebody, and now we do this, it is known. And over time, she got short and she just, why is it like it is known? Can't I do this? No, why? It is known. And then, but give full credit, which George Martin is a very smart person. There was also things she didn't know about how to survive in those lands. Right. And she's told why to do it. And the funny thing is, she needs to do it then, and she then does it going forward as more of a life practice because it's strong. Right. But she gets the same reason. And it's a great kind of commentary, because again, something happened at some time. It's like a legend, and now it is known. And you're like, cool, that taught me about hydrating in the desert. You know what I mean? This other thing, totally worthless. So it's kind of like, I guess my nigh, really, it's like a nigh to Vi appreciation. Because there's one side that you can have Vi codifying stupid, and then people are just doing stupid because it is known. Right. But the strong part of Vi, this is where like Nigh and Vi come together. So like, actually that was smart. And rather than having to learn that from scratch, it just gets built into the culture or the law, and just, it is known and it's helpful. So yeah, it's kind of cool. So there's heroic, but there's a lot of unheroic stuff too. And this gets into the Baha'i as well, because first, say the case of Islam, the long tradition, and it doesn't reform. But then it's also going like with Canada, that motion we were talking about earlier, basically trying to get things in some kind of formal, on the books permanency.
Mm-hmm.
That whenever people, I would say that applies also to, you know, sniffing off body parts and shaming your body chemistry. There's certain things like that that really need to be thought through,
Mm-hmm.
given enough time to breathe, and then evidence needs to lead the way.
Yeah.
Did you have anything to jump on that?
Not on that specifically, no.
Okay. You were talking about, what was the last thing? What was the story I was going to talk about? Oh, it says, I had it down here later in the list, but that thing he said made me think of this. Have you seen this? I'll put in the chat bar.
Sure. Is this the one where it's in South Africa and the woman says something about how science can't explain black magic?
Yes, yes, it is. I was like, I fell out. I fell out. Oh my goodness. I had to stand up and walk away from the screen for a minute. I was like, no, I'm not observing this. Humans are not actually doing this, but they are, Maya, right in front of us. And proud, like they're being recorded, like, yup, I'm like, there's some saying, I forget who it was, maybe it was Sargon of Akkad, said to somebody, like, do you actually think this is going to age well? I mean, do you really think that 20, 50, 100 years from now, we're going to look back and go, oh, those people began the wave? No. Any future you imagine has to be based on facts. So if you actually have math right, you've got, you know, cosmos, physics equations correct, if you got the Mojo phenomenon seen, if you got fossils, then your idea of the future, some of that will be true, at least however much you locked on to the forensics for the future. But if it's based on feelings, no, sorry kiddies, that you're going to be disappointed with how the future rolls out. I mean, if you're gonna actually say that the natural world does not have two genders, that's just silly. I mean,
and sometimes their justification for that as well is that supposedly certain like Aboriginal tribes like acknowledged a third gender or something, but like to understand what that means, you have to know like the gender roles that they had in those cultures. Like you have to know a lot more than just saying, oh, they had a third gender. Like you can't take that out of context. And then the other thing too is that even if they had that, like what if they were just wrong? Like there are cultures that believe in like voodoo, like so what? It doesn't make it true.
Okay, thank you. But that's another thing which gets thrown around all the time in these smoke screens is crazy, disproportionate analogies. It's ridiculous. Like the classic one is saying, well, scientists on both sides of the global warming issue. No, it's not like that. There's a majority. And there is a large majority and a small minority. That's a much more accurate. You know, you could say minority to majority or small minority to large majority. I think the data, what I've seen so far, you could say that's the state of scientists. Anything else, you're just completely lying.
Yeah.
So same thing here is that anecdotal evidence. Oh, I can't stand anecdotal evidence because it's playing on your heartstrings and saying, well, this is a thing. That's an Aboriginal tribe. I mean, I don't know how they say these words and not realize how stupid they are when they're saying them. Like right there, Aboriginal tribe. Okay, for me, maybe my nod just jumps in with like outside the box, like, what about this?
Yeah.
What about the other Aboriginal tribes? Like,
who didn't have a third gender?
Exactly. When you said the word Aboriginal tribe, didn't your brain go, I didn't use the word Aboriginals, plural? Because that would be a stronger.
You know what
I mean? Like right then, my mind, my psyche immediately noted it would have been stronger to say Aboriginal.
Right.
Why didn't I use that word? It would have been stronger to say all Australians.
Right.
It'd have been stronger to say all Australians throughout known recorded history.
Mm-hmm.
Then all the other continents. So you literally are trying to talk about genders, which goes across all continents
that
there are habitation on. and into most of the animal world. That is a staggering amount of evidence for two genders. It doesn't mean there aren't other things that happen, there aren't variations, and those aren't beautiful and wonderful and heroic. Yes, 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 yes. However, to call that not two genders is just what? Based on, like you said, possibly one Aboriginal tribe. How does that not make your brain just ache? I don't get it. Like, don't you hear the creaking strain of making that argument?
Yeah.
And don't you know, I mean, we're all humans. We've actually told stories, and you may tell a lie sometimes. You try to avoid that, but we all know that you may embellish, try to avoid that. But even most virtuous, there are different ways you can like tell a story to emphasize a point more. For example, a situation at a funeral may have been 90 minutes long, but a key encounter in that thing only took 30 seconds. And so we tell the story. Most of the funeral of 90 minutes, you do real short. And then those special 30 seconds, you may take 3 minutes to talk about that 30-second encounter. So I get that. But so right there, okay, all humans, we do that. We do that. So note that you're doing that, but note when you are straining. Straining into exaggeration, straining into lying. You know what I mean? Straining into omission to a faulty omission. So I mean, humans need to get more aware. That's why emoji reading is such a great practice. It really puts you in touch of the different processes you use to say what you are, what another human is, and what we are together. The story of those three things. And so most people are very sloppy. They're very sloppy from just being lazy most of their life. And they're starving, so they're greedy and, as they say in the street, thirsty. And so their thirstiness biases all their research and all their pushes. Ugh, I don't like it. I need to get this energy, because otherwise you kind of like just get swept away by a current. You have to actively resist a current, particularly like say in the case of liberals, which are like standing close to you. They used to stand real close to me. You know what I mean? But over the years, this sort of element of, I kind of interpreted early on as I'm liberal, but there is an element of any area, any thought that is more faulty / indulgent of itself.
Right.
But that indulgent side got bigger and stronger and is like kicked out the actual classical liberals. They basically kicked us out and have their we don't do evidence party.
Yeah.
So, that was that. We didn't even talk about it, but too much. But yeah, and he had to apologize for she's saying that science is a patriarchy, and
it's like Western colonial institution or something. Yeah.
And experiments are not biased towards anything. They can't be. That's the way it works, because anyone has to be able to do it. If a female scientist, if a different ethnicity scientist, if people with different political views scientists do an experiment that disproves you, you're disproved. If they can't, you're not. That's how science works. It's not being, this gets into like being accommodating. Okay, I'm accommodating to gender studies. I think it's important. And I think if a person wants to spend their career doing that, fine for them, rock on. I'm sure there are worthy contributions to it. So if you want to actually make more of a curriculum because more people are interested in it, fine. That's your life choice to do that. But then two things. You put that out in the marketplace, and the marketplace decides what it wants to do with that. You can't force the marketplace to hire things they don't want to hire.
Yeah.
And then you don't get to go into other classrooms. This is my same take on religion in schools. Yeah, I think teach it because it's very influential, and it teaches you upper level kind of spiritual thinking sometimes, if you don't agree with it. Even like debating it gives you upper level thinking. But don't bring it into a science class. It's a religion class. Why? Keep it there, and in other places that allow for speculation or talking about its historical influence, like sociology or other classes. Sure, because sociology, I think you have to study religion. You can't study sociology without religion. But science actually specifically doesn't need that help. Thank you very much. Like that's its whole purpose. Its whole purpose is to not have that involved. So I'm of the view, you do you.
Yeah.
until you doing you actually starts taking away my rights. So, for
Yeah.
example, like the hate speech thing,
Yeah.
that's not harm like assault if it's actually being done in a public place.
Right.
Although there may be some words that you may consider to be just too nasty. I think even most of those should be allowed in a private, thing, because then you don't have to go to that comics concert and their videos on YouTube, you just don't watch them.
Yeah.
But then in a public place, I think that you should be allowed to say what one wants. I mean, unless it's actually getting to where you are being intimidating.
Yeah.
Or you're trying to incite a thing. Having one's ideas challenged is not unhealthy harm.
Yeah.
Was it Jonathan Haidt was talking about that, or maybe it was Peterson, but anti-fragility. I think it was Peterson actually. That you need to be stimulated with painful pushback in order to actually have bones get strong, brains get bigger, and ideas to get more robust. So basically that was it. But the one thing I don't know if you knew about this is that he had apologized, and then she harangued him about black magic has lightning, and they can't. And if you go with science, that's basically saying black magic doesn't really have lightning. Well, yeah, it does. I mean, and this is key. I'm even cool with this. Science doesn't get to tell black magic it doesn't have lightning in a black magic class or a cross religion class. Fine.
Right.
But in science, there's three elements here. There's your class, there's that class, and then there's the open public.
Right.
So if you want to talk about black magic, I'm not saying that I'm going to go over to your thing and stomp on what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to believe that lightning works that way, that's your right. If you don't believe that spirits, talk to you from beyond the grave, that's your right. And I think it's mean to go over and try and stomp on someone doing that. But coming over and actually taking over two areas, science and journalism, no, back the fuck off. Back off.
Yeah.
So and the reason is because they really want to control area 3. The open market of people being given lots of ideas and then freely choosing what they want. The more information people do, they choose the best product, which may or may not be you. And so it amazes me, they all do it though. Most religions, they go the route, except those who are that are aggressively reformist, is they always tend to go the route of just updating enough instead of like getting ahead of the curve. You know what I mean? That just amazes me.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned journalism too, because I'm actually majoring in journalism in university right now. And so we had these, there was this day where there was this series of talks. It technically, it wasn't for a course, but almost everybody had to go for some course or another. So it was indirectly kind of mandatory to go. And it was all these talks about how Islamophobia is bad and how Trump is bad. And then one of the talks was by this woman who teaches this 4th-year course about covering LGBT issues in journalism. And she's very activist oriented and very SJW and all this stuff. And her entire talk was about how journalists should be activists.
That's the whole point of what they do. I mean, right there, this gets back to the thing of these improper nobilities being put forward. That being an activist journalist is better than a truth seeker journalist. You know what I mean? Or truth seeker scientist. I mean, how? It literally is it's stunning that you could do that and that you could believe that and that other people would fall for it. Yeah. Because whenever you pick something other than highest truth as the main goal, it's serving somebody. You're becoming subservient to something that shouldn't be in charge. And it's lies. It's just going to build up some dynasty of stupid that'll take however damage it does and take however long it does to move on when the next one comes along.
Yeah.
So like this one here, no nuance. That's another thing that I noticed is a reoccurring theme throughout these, which is if you listen to Sam Harris and him talking on Islam, and you hear Donald Trump, the only thing they agree on at all are a few basic facts of problems Islam has.
Right.
Other than that, they disagree with lots of other stuff about Islam in general. They disagree with how the situation should be handled. And then they disagree on most other political and philosophical points in general. And yet people take like any person you see who might be like a Sam Harris type, and they start talking. He makes this one point. It was him or someone else. It's a really good point. But real quick, they immediately put him in the category of you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're like Trump.
Yeah.
And so this is an argument. Maybe.
Actually, I just want to quickly jump in with something related to that. So during this day of like talks that we had, the last talk was about Islamophobia, and it was two people talking. One of them is like a young woman who's a Muslim and a journalist, and very liberal and like regressive leftist, not like classical liberal, unfortunately. And the other person was somebody who teaches a course about covering religion in journalism. And so there was like a question and answer period at the end. And I asked them, what about people like Richard Dawkins and Bill Maher? Because they're not just saying, oh, like brown people bad. Like they're not making it racial. They're just talking about the ideas and critiquing the ideas. And I said, like, is there a legitimate place for critique of religion that falls in that category? And their basic response was like, no. And they said, they talked about how Bill Maher was horrible and Islamophobic. And so it's like, what are you supposed to do? Like,
see, right then, okay. I think we're really kind of getting some. We're probably talking a lot of this over the coming time. Maya is these certain reoccurring mental trip ups people are having, and weaknesses of character. So mental trip ups and weakness of character is it's something, and maybe Bill Maher that said it. Was one of them. He basically said, it was some guy, that where is the person who is disputing it that is acceptable to you? Because it seems like only apologists are acceptable. So, and this gets what you're saying. Basically, you really something great there. It's a great example. It seems like you're just saying no to critique. Yeah. And I don't know how anyone can do that and feel they're doing right. I'm thinking. This is the mental weakness part. Okay. Basically throwing blame. And you can throw the blame that should be on you or should be on someone else. And so, for example, with Bill Maher, I noticed a lot of times the liberal guests on the panel, he gets into them, and he himself is mainly a liberal. He is, anti-conservative stuff. But they get upset with him when he does things like myself, same way I do it. I'm simply going with what the Quran says, the life of Muhammad, the hadiths that are most respected, the most respected scholars, and things like Pew polls, and merely saying that there's absolutely nothing there that's not true with some strong evidence. And just saying that is racist. Which part? Is it racist to make, which part's not true? And then is assembling this truth racist? Whatever you call it, just bad, being a meanie, whatever negative words you want to give it. Just because you pointed out something that is true. And Bill Maher leaves it open to them. I do myself as well. If there's other points I'm not seeing, fine. But they generally say those aren't points, or you lack the faculties as a human to truly understand the point. I don't need to have lived as a Muslim throughout my life to actually read a book. And I understand words, I understand concepts. I always love this, and I've listened to some ex-Muslims on this who speak fluent, Arabic. They're like, and they're not necessarily, that's their native language. They learn it because of the Quran. They're like, let me tell you, it doesn't really. They change a word for strike the neck versus this to the neck, or these kinds of things. Little quibbles are like. Since I can read both the original and the translation, let me assure you, there's not a lot of major difference in the points being made here. This is subjugation of people inappropriately. You can't say that. Why? Are you fluent in Arabic? Have you read the Quran cover to cover? huh? I mean,
Yeah.
it's there's actually two guys, like the two Zenai, who are actually, it's called the Quran Reloaded, and they're literally reading through the Quran while also reading a translation of it to help them understand it. And in each episode, the kind of same theme. They're like, okay, I do think I understand it much better than I did before. It seems at least it's worse. You know what? Now that I understand the words better, I think it's worse than before. It's amazing. Oh my goodness, it's almost it's time. Do you have to go? Are we talking a little
Yeah,
more?
I can hang out for another like 20 minutes or so, but
Okay, great. Great.
Yeah.
It's fun. I have so many things to talk about here. There's so
no
many.
worries.
Oh goodness. Probably one of the ones that I got brought on was the Christakis. Are you familiar with that case?
Who?
Professor Christakis.
Not sure if I'm familiar with that one.
Here, let me send you a link real quick.
Sure.
Sometimes the digital is more.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm bad with names, so I might know what happened, but just have forgotten the name or something. Okay. Oh, okay. This is the Yale Halloween costume thing.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Okay.
saw that.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, again, when I look at their energy, I see
Yeah.
one person who's trying to be reasonable and actually like have a dialogue and is even saying I'm open to revising some of my positions on things. And another person is like, no revision of our positions. We're absolutely right. No give whatsoever. And offended by facts at all
Yeah.
and pushback at all. That's just
Yeah.
unreasonable. I mean, seriously, not only is that unreasonable to ask of another human, my spirits assure me that is unreasonable and untenable to ask of nature. You cannot ask gravity, I mean, like, gravity was against my relatives for all these years. I want recompense from gravity. Okay, well, good luck with that. That's just how things work. Oh, and it amazes me. Like, I've studied heroic stories in so many contexts. Legends, mythology, religion, urban myth, comics, TV shows, cable, anything you can think of. I love story. There are some consistent themes of not being an asshole. You know what I mean? All cultures, science fiction, fantasy, real life, you know what I mean? Now, ancient times, there is just some general don't be an asshole thing. And it's amazing to me that I think it is getting a lot of people riled up, thank goodness. But I'm also amazed by how many people are watching the thing that happened with Peterson, what happened with Laura Southern, you know, what's happening with the Halloween costume thing. These are children. These are, for example, people say, but like Islam, maybe it can be reformed, but right now it's the slowest kid in the class, and we need to bring that level up.
Yeah.
Those people yelling at the Christakises, or just the one at that one occasion.
Yeah.
They were dialoguing like children that you're telling them that they can't get the costume they want for some, you know.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up because there's something going on. Like, it's one thing to disagree or to even have like strong opinions, but the yelling is just so like borderline psychotic that you have to wonder what's going on psychologically. Like, there's something happened in childhood that wasn't fulfilled or didn't get, you know, processed properly or.
Totally.
So,
the yelling and we mentioned earlier the glee.
Yeah.
It's like a sick glee and a psychotic yelling. and there's a consistently, you see this energy coming off of them. Like, you know, like from all of them, different apologists, SJW apologists, Islamic apologists, feminist apologists, they just get so riled up when you do two things. You simply just don't capitulate from the get-go.
Yeah.
Like they're just inordinately angry. Like, I'm talking to Jordan Peterson. I would like him to maybe revise some of his views on Christianity, you know, but I don't expect it automatically. And then if he doesn't agree,
like, start screaming.
Yeah, and from the beginning. Now, granted, I understand that to some degree, because if I talked to Jordan Peterson for like 90 minutes, I made a lot of good points, and he didn't even acknowledge those points.
Right.
I feel like, oh, we're not making much progress here.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we would disagree our entire lives.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know what I mean? But I felt like, oh, at least he's listening, we're exchanging, and we're kind of getting into each other's heads a bit here. But they want that from the beginning. They just want you. They want you to give.
Yeah.
That's all they want.
Yeah.
I know it's not simple,
Yeah.
but they don't want a conversation with another human that would allow that person, themselves, or audiences viewing it to grow. They want to win.
Yeah.
Right there. It's like a Jai, kind of a Jai 4951. Are you there to grow? Or are you there to win?
Right.
I mean, because growing is the winning. If you actually put just winning in front, then what if winning's not growing? It's really strange to me. It's kind of putting winning before truth.
Yeah.
So that stuff just gets me so upset that humans allow their spirits to be, brought down like that. It's like, come on, you're better than this. But your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say there's a lot of like conservatives and classical liberals on YouTube and other places who have proposed different theories for why, like what's going on psychologically. And so one theory is that like a lot of these, it's becoming more common nowadays for people to be like only children, like not having any siblings, and like a lot of parents are having kids later in life, so they pamper that like one child like to beyond all bounds of reason. And then the child like goes out into the world. And even like, even people in North America who are relatively poor by North American standards are still well off by global standards. So most of them have never known any real adversity. And so all they've known in their life is getting their way. And I mean, that's just one theory. Like there's different theories about.
Yeah, I'm sure there's something to that.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something to that. There's probably also, every generation thinks the generation after it is spoiled. I mean, that's kind of
this is quite something. I mean.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm saying I'm trying to get both sides there. I agree. I think that happens in general, that sentiment, but I think in this case there's probably more to it than there usually is.
Yeah.
Then also adding on to that is, I'm sorry, what were you saying again, real quick?
Just that some of them are only children.
Yes.
They're pampered. They're
Gotcha.
All this stuff. Yeah.
So I think that probably definitely is an influence. I think another influence that is influencing, I think, families that even are still having large families.
Yeah.
Is the internet is a great step forward for humanity, but we're still learning how to deal with it. And really, that's just kind of emblematic of a larger push of mass media, global mass media. And this is a lesson that needs to be learned. I think it's going to take some generations to learn this lesson, which is respect for data.
Right.
Because before, the issue was they didn't have data. And that was kind of kept from them. And that was the issue with it. Now it's kind of gone to a different direction, but it's also problematic, is there is a surplus of data, and there is not a strong way of saying which is based more on factual reality and what's not.
Yeah.
So you can consume a large volume of media of a certain way of thought, and you're not getting competing arguments. And so that can seem very strong. And this kind of gets into, you made me think of it, you talked about the only children, but just child raising in general, actually, is that I think a lot of people are allowing the internet to raise their children.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that necessarily that parents didn't do that before to some degree, but I think they used to, maybe let the farm raise their child. You give the child chores or whatever it is, but you may live in the city or whatever, but you basically give them work to do, and that's how you kept them busy. But that work, unless they were involved in trade or something like that at a port, it didn't necessarily involve a lot of other people with a lot of other ideas.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I mean, you send your kid into school to whatever, they're going to have to go on the internet. And when they do, they're going to be exposed to just pretty much a mountain of ideas. And I think before, the problem was people picked ideas based on it being colloquial.
Right.
Ideas that they had more exposure with. Now I think it's going a different way more. They're picking it on comfortability. They're actually saying, I have this buffet of options, and I'm kind of being told by the internet, I can choose any of them and get 24/7, 365, streaming.
Yeah, bias confirmation.
Bias confirmation all the time, a whole reality like this. And so they're choosing based on comfort, and they're not being shown the joys of being a true observer of nature, of what's actually going on, and that it can be uncomfortable, but there's nothing as joyous as actually realizing that leopards and jaguars are actually separate. Or that you thought that the leopard where you came from is the biggest cat ever, and you realize no, there's the lion and the tiger, and you didn't know that. But it's more true. It's always better when it's more true. Although a lot of people were disappointed when they found out when they left their country that the jaguar and leopard is actually not the biggest. It sounds silly, but it's funny. And a lot of people would rather believe, they'd rather continue believing this is the largest great cat, but it's not, rather than have their little thing lesser. But it's always just better to know the story, because to me, the great story is everything, and you share in its greatness as much as you get it. As much as you actually get what's going on, that's your share of it. So you're like, but the panther's from our country, and in my little headspace, it's the biggest cat ever.
Yeah.
Okay, but you're the top person of a small diluted bubble. Is that what you want? I would rather come from, I guess where I came from, the closest cats we had were probably like mountain lions or bobcats or something.
Right.
I live in the city. When I learned about the great cats, I didn't feel like, although some people did, they would tell stories of the mountain lion or the bobcat. They would make it seem like it was the super cat, that like no other great cat was as good as this great cat. And it just made it feel like we've got the best great cat. Our place has the best great cat. And I'm like, I felt instinctually that the more I learned about great cats in general, I felt like I understood them more, and thus they, as a overall phenomenon in nature, liked me more. And I think they do. I think all phenomena in nature likes it when you get them. They don't like it when you lie about them. You know what I mean? For your own gain. They just don't like it. I know I'm personifying that a bit, but I think the logic is sound there. Gravity doesn't like it when you fib. You know what I mean? If you believe it, and if you believe the fibs, you'll be punished. Gravity will tell you no. And yeah, it's almost like they resist being told things like that. It seems kind of silly, but it's the same kind of thing of like, ancient maps, there's a very common practice, is they would position their country in the center of the map, make it way big, and then they had these ones in the periphery that were really tiny, even though a lot of those adjacent countries are bigger than that one.
Yeah.
And and they would do this even after they saw world maps. You know what I mean? It wasn't until basically things like, newspapers and so forth made to where the general populace kind of got it like, oh, Siam is not actually that big. You know what I mean? Because how long ago was that? I mean, it's a story, but there is some historical accuracy there to some degree. And The King and I, that wasn't that long ago, The King and I.
The what, sir?
The story of The King and I. Okay. That story's not that old, right? Where the English teacher, she goes over and she tutors his kids and whatever. It's set in a historical time frame. Right. I think she had like one of those big gowny dresses. So I mean, it was
that wasn't too long ago.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago. I mean, in the grand scheme of things. And at that point, that was one of the things in the story is explaining to the king's top child that Siam is not actually the center of the world, and that there are countries bigger than Siam. He's like, what? Blasphemy! Yeah, he went to his dad and basically cried. This is basically, this is a great analogy. He did. He cried blasphemy laws on his tutor and wanted his dad to shut her up. I forget exactly how it goes. I think they just avoid the subject or something. Yeah. But that was the thing. And he's like, well, I need to raise him to be strong in our cultural identity. And she's like, yeah, but that map's not accurate. You know what I mean? How does being in delusion about, geography, we're not even talking about like soft sciences, that's geography. How does being deluded about geography help a prince? I don't get it. But that's a real debate. The need to have pride in tradition versus realizing that Siam is not, in fact, the biggest country in the world.
Right.
And again, I guess some people look at it as you're lessening them. Are you? To me, truth is always top. So if you now realize Siam is this big with these things going on, with this geopolitical landscape, you really know Siam. So if you are trying to be a lover, a champion for your country, then you need to accurately know your country. You don't lying about it, even if it sounds like an idealistic lying. Idealistic fibbing is still fibbing. You know what I mean? Intentions don't change the non-truthness. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I went on there, but did you have something on that?
No, that's okay. I had something I wanted to say. I'm pulling a blank right now.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it goes back to what I said earlier about how like they divide up the world into like good and evil for them is like the oppressive, patriarchal, white supremacist, whatever thing that they've concocted in their heads. And yeah, so it's like to them, if you're not on their side, it's like you're actively like encouraging discrimination and encouraging oppression and like you're somehow responsible for all these evil things that they attribute to whatever they don't like. So I think that also like gets emotions riled up if you look at the world that way.
Yeah, it does. But what I don't understand is how when they're doing that, they don't know they're doing that. You're to some degree. I mean, for me, it goes back to that saying that a fair deal leaves everyone slightly disappointed.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know how, as a human from anywhere in the world, I don't care where you're from, you haven't noticed that humans are like that. You know what I mean? That's kind of a human thing. So whenever I hear an argument that is just so completely absolute in one way, you just know it's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like every argument I've ever looked at that was just so blatantly one-sided and just minimalizing, like that's even ones that were my side and I still agreed with.
Yeah.
But when presented like that, when thought through in that kind of process, it's going to have bullshit. It's just going to, because that's not how one gets to the bottom of things. Or how one gets to being in a better world. Taking revenge, you know what I mean? Breaking the greens out of the gladiators and taking over the reds does not make a good place. And see, that's where, to me, like this is why I think the work of Podler is so important, because what the Hulk kind of represented to me, in a weird way, it sounds totally different, but there is a relationship between the Discovery and Incredible Hulk there. Because he was strong enough. And I didn't identify the physical strength, but he was strong enough to break out the greens from the red oppression, but keep the greens from taking revenge. He had that strength. But when his strength left, their biases took over.
Yeah.
And I think that science and good journalism and good history, you know what I mean? A good observation of things, whether it be, a Quark or whether it be Mojo, that is that authority that everyone, regardless of where you're coming from, we have to agree. Like Trump, are we going to say that crowd size is bigger than it is? Like you can even argue, like I can see arguing over why it's smaller.
Right.
But are we actually going to say that visually less people is not visually less people? I mean, like, how is that saying, right then to me, even a cause I believe in, that's the moment I'll say, I'll fight for this cause outside the main group.
Right, not on those terms.
Not on those terms. I'm going to fight for this over here on my own because I cannot get down with the way you're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know why that. I think we need to talk about more and make that a thing for people so they realize, oh, these like traps one falls in, and you don't want to fall into these traps.
Right.
Because they want to be heroic, but then as a part of that, there's greed and fear and other things and revenge that kind of get into it. And if they're told that's part of you being heroic, a lot of stupid and toxic can hide within, a package of good intentions. We had to point them out, Maya. you had to point them out because otherwise you kind of skate on by. And I know as a Najee are very good at this. I've done the spell myself. You can actually have some crazy shit go by. I've done this, and you just act like nothing happened.
Yeah.
You can get some things about that. One, a lot of people will not press the issue because it's so weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next, some people won't press the issue after it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, this is crazy, they will believe they didn't see what they just saw with their own eyes. They will literally take your body language as a human over their own eyes. They look at you, they respect you or whatever, and they take your body language, and you're actually saying that's not a rape. And you're watching a rape. You're literally watching it, but the reaction is that's not a rape. And some people, that turns their switch off, their moral switch off. They're like, I guess I'm not. And I guess somewhere there, they literally say to themselves, I guess I'm not seeing what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Wow. Whoa. That. Come on, people.
Yeah, the power of ideology is kind of incredible.
It really is. Oh, I don't hold you too long. We've gone a bit over here, but that
Yeah,
was
yeah, that's okay.
a lot of fun. I saw much stuff to talk about, so maybe we can do this again in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, whenever you have time, possibly. I wouldn't mind doing it again. There's all
Yeah,
kinds.
sure. Yeah, I might have more time this week actually because I'm probably starting. I don't know yet if I'm starting work later this week or next week. So once I find out, I can get in touch with you.
Okay, cool. That'd be great. All right, World, this was wonderful, and thanks for the conversation, Maya. It was really, really great.
You too. Thanks.
Take care.